Welcome everybody to the third annual World Sanskrit Day celebration at Ananda Ashram in Monroe, New York. Those of you in the room here with us and those of you online, welcome. Tap, tap. We're going to start the Friday program with Suzanne Lang, who's come from Philadelphia to be with us. And I'm going to have Girija come introduce Suzanne.
Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to introduce Suzanne. Thank you for joining us. Suzanne Lang is an integral Vedic counselor who uses Sanskrit, yoga, Ayurveda, and Jyotisha as vehicles for inner transformation and healing. Suzanne began studying Sanskrit at University of Pennsylvania in 2017, and Sanskrit is part of her daily sadhana. A former dancer, poet, and professor with a BA in literature from Dartmouth and an MFA in poetry from Emerson College, Suzanne lives in Philadelphia with her husband and daughters. Thank you.
Let's see if the mic's working. Yes? Okay. It's such an honor and a joy to be here with all of you doing my favorite thing in the world, goddess worship, and Sanskrit, of course. So we're going to open the World Sanskrit Day celebration with some Devi Mahatmyam. And we can go on to the next slide. So I'll do a very brief introduction of the text. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with this text. I know at the ashram that people chant the Devi Mahatmyam in its entirety, I think, during Navaratri, but for some of you it might be new. So this is a Puranic text, so it's situated within a Purana. It's about 1400 years old, so like 5th, 6th century CE. And the history of it, in terms of how the text was synthesized from multiple sources, is really fascinating and complicated. And I'm not going to untangle all of that, but it's something interesting to read about. I have some books here so I don't forget. But I found this book very helpful in praise of the goddess. This is by Devadatta Kali, and you'll see some quotes from this scholar and devotee of the goddess on my slides. And so I thought it was really interesting how the Mahatmyam, it weaves together various sources. So, and some people will date the origin of the Devi Mahatmyam all the way back to the Rig Veda, the Devi Suktam in the Rig Veda, and say that this is like the germ of this text. But then there are places where you can see like indigenous tribal sources, Vaishnava sources, epic sources. And then similar to the Bhagavad Gita, the Devi Mahatmyam is within a larger text, within a Purana, but then exists on its own as well. So all of these various sources basically synthesized, but then come together for a coherent invocation and celebration of Devi as the ultimate source of the entire universe. And when I heard Shanta's theme for this year's conference, that it was peace and unity, I told Indira I didn't even have to think for 1 second what I wanted to present on. I was like, well, Devi Mahatmyam, because the hymn that we'll chant today over and over again tells us that the Devi is in all of us, and that one of the forms of the Devi is peace itself. So that's why I chose this text for today. Plus, it's just a wonderful way to situate us at the beginning of the conference. And the other thing I wanted to say was why I chose this image. Oh, if you could stay for 1 second, Anna. This image of the goddess here. So this is a tantric image of one of the 30 lunar phases. And this is the main way lately that I've been having my sadhana with the Devi, is by connecting with the moon, and the moon as Matra. And I believe tonight is the full moon, which is Purnima. So it's a very auspicious way to begin our conference, because on the day of the full moon, it's the energy for manifestation is here, right? For us to share our wisdom with one another and to really shine our light outwards. So the timing couldn't be better. So this is an image of Chitra or Purnima. So that's the moon that will be shining down on us this evening. And also wanted to mention I used a tantric image because one of the most famous commentaries on the Devi Mahatmyam is a tantric commentary. And so this isn't a tantric text. It precedes the tantras, but it's been very much adopted by tantrikas. And you'll see that in the tantric images, very detailed, because people are visualizing and really like becoming one with the goddess through this detailed visualization, and also the importance of the yantra. Okay. And some of you might be familiar with this text through alternate titles. So the Devi Mahatmyam spread throughout India, probably from the northwest all the way throughout the subcontinent. And so basically picked up regional names, I think. And so one of the names, and I have one right here, is the Chandi Pataha. And so we can translate this Pataha from Pat, so the invocation of Chandi, Chandi being one of the many, 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 many names of the Devi. I tried to make a list when I was going through the Devi Mahatmyam, and I kind of ran out of my legal pad, you know. So Chandi referring to one of the demons that she kills in the text. And then the text is also commonly known as the Durga Sapta Shati, so the 700 verses of Durga. And so this is really interesting because you'll see the hymn that we're chanting, the numbering is really odd, so that what looks like 2 lines is numbered as 3 lines. So from what I understand, there was a little bit of tinkering done to the text so that it could have 700 verses. So why? Why would we want 700 verses? I think this has to do with the Gita, right? Having 700 verses, and so making a statement about this text, right? And I think it's interesting because both of these texts take place basically on a battlefield. You know, like this, when you read it, this is a pretty bloody, it has it for everyone. You know, if you like blood and gore, like I was cracking up. They not only defeat their enemies, they literally eat them. They eat them. I mean, I was like, this cannot get more fierce than eating your enemy. So this might one-up the battle scenes, you know, in the Mahabharata. And you thought it couldn't get any darker. But anyhow, you know, there's this actual literal battle that's going on. But of course, we're all here. We're all very spiritual, right? I don't imagine most of us are going out and committing acts of violence, right? So we want to think about this text as an allegory, right? And also this spiritual battle. And so the very beginning of the Gita really calls to mind the work that the Devi Mahatmyam is doing, right? When it says, Dharma kshetre, kuru kshetre, right? So on the field of the Kurus, so literally a battleground, right? But then I like to translate in the field of Dharma, right? So this field, this vibrational field that we felt so magnificently last night with Laraji, right? That he really put us in the field. And so here I like to think of us as we're in the field of the goddess, right? And so then we're approaching it spiritually. And then, you know, some translations like this one, it's kind of funny to me, like instead of using any of the names, it's all like, and he who is of the higher consciousness, like the spiritual allegory is really like, if you don't get it, it's like you'll get it because it's hitting you over the head kind of. But anyhow, I want us to keep that in mind, that we're really not getting like charged up to go literally slay demons, right? But we can think of the demon of the ego, for instance. Okay? All right. So then I'm just going to situate us within the text. So where are we going? Within the Devi Mahatmyam. So the Devi Mahatmyam has 3 sections called Charita, and we're in the third and final, the Uttama Charita. And we're going to a particular section of the Uttama Charita. And so each of the Charitas has a dhyanam in the beginning, so to 3 forms of the goddess. And so the goddess that's invoked at the beginning of the Uttama Charita is Maha Saraswati. And so these are later believed to be tantric additions to the text as well. So I have another tantric image of Maha Saraswati, and I just put the invocation, the meditation to Saraswati here. And one thing that I loved, since we're at Ananda Ashram, is that the bija mantra for Maha Saraswati is Klim, denoting her essential nature as Ananda. So also perfect for us. Okay. We're almost there to the actual text. So we're in the third section, and then the sections will have narrative sections, and then there'll be also hymns within the sections. And so the hymns are most commonly chanted ritually. And so I picked one of the most famous sections for chanting, and this is called the Aparajita Stuti. So it's the hymn to the invincible Devi. And so here, another way, lots of ways that we can divide things by 3. So another way to divide the goddess into 3, we have the para, and the apara. And the apara is on the bottom right. You can see she's also translated as like the terrible or the fierce goddess, and that made me think Karuna Devi of this morning, right, when we were chanting and we had like the most fearful of fearful, something along those lines in the chant. And how can that be, right? That there is a fierce aspect to the divine. And so that's the section that we're in, because in this third section, if you like the bloody battle scenes, like this is the section for you. So in this section, the Devi first comes out of Parvati, and then when Devi gets really provoked, Kali springs out of her forehead, and then here comes Kali on the battlefield, and there's this demon called Rakta Bija, right? So it's like the seed of blood or something like this. And so his superpower is that when you spill his blood, when it drops onto the ground, another Asura springs up. And so at first he seems to be the one that's invincible, but then Devi says to Kali, come and follow along with me, and as I spill his blood, you drink it, and then you eat all the little asuras that spring up from the ground. And then eventually he's completely drained of his blood and is conquered. So I think this is a great image, right, of the apara form of the Devi. So that's where we are, and we're going to be chanting this hymn together. It's 21 verses altogether, but you'll see the numbers. Chapter 5, but in section 3, verses 14 to 76. Again, the numbering's funky, so it really is 21 verses. And we can go on to the next slide. So we're going to spend a lot of time chanting together. The meter of this hymn is all in the Anushtubh meter. And so we have 32 syllables. And that means that we can break down these 2 lines into 4 padas, and that each of the padas will have 8 syllables each. And there are many different ways to chant this meter, and so I'm just going to chant it in the way that I was taught, and you all might have learned a different meter, and that's fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the 21 verses, column response, And then again, I picked these verses, one, because it really fits the theme of the unity and peace, but also you'll see after the first 2 verses, it's really fun for translating because the following 19 verses are exactly the same except for 1 word. So all we have to do is translate 1 word once we get, like, fill in the blank, like Mad Libs style, of Sanskrit. So once we get to those, our job is pretty easy. And you'll see on the slides that I've put in bold the word that's changing. So the first 2 make us work a little bit harder because they're not exactly the same. But the third and fourth padas will be the same throughout the entire thing. So what we'll do is we'll chant it, call and response, and then we'll go through and translate it. And then if we have time, we'll really try to soak up, the meaning of it. I don't know if we'll have time to chant twice, but we'll see how the time flies or not. All right. So what I'll do is I'm going to chant this, the 2 lines together just once by myself, and then we'll do call and response. Like I'll chant first pada, you'll chant it with me. I'll chant second pada, you'll chant it with me. Third and fourth, it's kind of funky to break it up. So I'll chant third and fourth together, and then we'll chant it together. All right, is that clear to everyone? All right, beautiful. So I'll just do it once so you hear the melody that I'm doing. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Vishnu Mayeti Shabdita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. Now we'll do call and response. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Vishnu Mayeti Shabdita Vishnu Mayeti Shabdita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Chaitanyatya Bhidiyate Chaitanyatya Bhidiyate Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Buddhi Rupena Sanstita Buddhi Rupena Sanstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Nidra Rupena Sanstita Nidra Rupena Sanstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Kshuddha Rupena Sanstita Kshuddha Rupena Sanstita Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, Chaya Rupena Sanstita, Chaya Rupena Sanstita, Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, Shakti Rupena Sanstita, Shakti Rupena Sanstita, Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, Trishna Rupena Sanstita, Trishna Rupena Sanstita, Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, Kshanti Rupena Sanstita, Kshanti Rupena Sanstita, Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, Jati Rupena Sanstita, Jati Rupena Sanstita, Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, Lajjarupena Sanstita, Lajjarupena Sanstita, Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, Shanti Rupena Sanstita, Shanti Rupena Sanstita, Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, Shraddharupena Sanstita, Shraddharupena Sanstita, Namastasyai, namastasyai, Namastasyai namo namaha. Namastasyai, namastasyai, namastasyai namo namaha. Ya Devi sarvabhuteshu, Ya Devi sarvabhuteshu, Kanti rupena sanstita, Kanti rupena sanstita. Namastasyai, namastasyai, namastasyai namo namaha. Namastasyai, namastasyai, namastasyai namo namaha. Ya Devi sarvabhuteshu, Ya Devi sarvabhuteshu, Lakshmi rupena sanstita, Lakshmi rupena sanstita. Namastasyai, namastasyai, namastasyai namo namaha. Namastasyai, namastasyai, namastasyai namo namaha. Ya Devi sarvabhuteshu, Ya Devi sarvabhuteshu, Vritti rupena sanstita, Vritti rupena sanstita. Namastasyai, namastasyai, namastasyai namo namaha. Namastasyai, namastasyai, namastasyai namo namaha. Ya Devi sarvabhuteshu, Ya Devi sarvabhuteshu, Smriti rupena sanstita, Smriti rupena sanstita. Namastasyai, namastasyai, namastasyai namo namaha. Namastasyai, namastasyai, namastasyai namo namaha. Ya Devi sarvabhuteshu, Ya Devi sarvabhuteshu, Daya rupena sanstita, Daya rupena sanstita. Namastasyai, namastasyai, namastasyai namo namaha. Namastasyai, namastasyai, namastasyai namo namaha. Ya Devi sarvabhuteshu, Ya Devi sarvabhuteshu, Tushti rupena sanstita, Tushti rupena sanstita. Namastasyai, namastasyai, namastasyai namo namaha. Namastasyai, namastasyai, namastasyai namo namaha. Ya Devi sarvabhuteshu, Ya Devi sarvabhuteshu, Matra rupena sanstita, Matra rupena sanstita. Namastasyai, namastasyai, namastasyai namo namaha. Namastasyai, namastasyai, namastasyai namo namaha. Ya Devi sarvabhuteshu, Ya Devi sarvabhuteshu, Pranti rupena sanstita, Pranti rupena sanstita. Namastasyai, namastasyai, Namastasyai namo namaha. Namastasyai, namastasyai, namastasyai namo namaha. Just take a moment to soak in the vibrations. Maybe close your eyes. Take a few breaths. It's such a real treat to be chanting in a room with actual people. I spend so much of my Sanskrit life on Zoom, and it's just not the same chanting when you only hear yourself, so thank you. I'm very sensitive. I'm sure most of you are as well, and I can literally, it's almost like, I'm like, whoa, with the vibrations. When I go to drink my water, I'm like, please don't let me splash it all over my body. So I hope you all really, this is all I want to get out of this, right? Is that we all just experience this amazing vibration of the Devi. And so in our time remaining, we'll translate this passage, which I promised you is not too tricky, even though it might seem very ambitious. At 21 verses, it's not, right? Because I told you, fill in the blank for 19 of them once we get through the first two. So we'll do some translation work, and I'll even throw in a little panini so that we'll all feel very official as grammarians. So the first thing that I want us to look at is, of course, what we chanted all 21 of the times, right? Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. So let's translate this one, and I'm sure you'll all notice that we say namas many, many times in here. Namas, 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 namo, namaha, right? So in its many forms. So we only have two words to deal with here. And so we have namas and we have tasyai. And so namas, I think we all know, Karuna Devi was teaching us namas this morning, right? Right? So I always like to use in English salutations, really just because I'm a sucker for really good children's books. And so those of you who know Charlotte's Web, Charlotte is the spider, of course, a very intelligent spider who can spell in her web, and Wilbur is the pig that becomes her best friend. And she always greets Wilbur salutations, and he's like, wait, what? What does that mean? What's this fancy word? So I love that image of the spider greeting the pig, as if saying namas, right? Because we want to keep in mind that when we go through this, that this applies not only to we humans. I don't think, if there are any non-humans in here, they're small, and I don't see them. Laraji did bring in some fireflies last night, so I haven't brought in any fireflies yet. It's a little early. But right, that this really applies to all sentient beings, okay? So salutations, however you want to take that, right? That we're paying reverence, right? And then what is this tasyai? Can someone help me out with this word? Oh, thank you so much, Anna. So Anna said dative, so she's giving us the vibhakti, or the case, right? So dative, some people call fourth vibhakti, fourth case. And you want to tell us if it's singular, dual, or plural? Singular. Thank you. Okay, so dative, singular, this is like the most grammar we'll do if you're not a grammar person, all right? And what then does it mean? And then more specifically to her, I would say. Yeah, so this comes from tat, right? And then the feminine form of tat will make it her. Yes, so salutations to her. So over and over again, paying salutations to her, Devi, right? Which we said so many times. So what I want us to look at in a moment in the Panini, which is fun, is why is this in the fourth vibhakti? Why do we say salutations to her? But before we do that, and so that I don't forget, you'll notice that we say namastasyai 3 times. And so that's a really nice poetic device as well, right? Salutations to her. And then almost like there's a slightly different flavor. Why would we say salutations to her if it's just the same her over and over again, right? So as you'll recall, the whole text is broken up into 3 sections. There's a meditation on 3 different aspects of the Devi in the beginning of each of the sections. So that's one way that some people will understand the 3 to hers, right? So the Mahakali, the Mahalakshmi, the Mahasaraswati. Other people will point to the 3 gunas, right? Because the Devi contains all of the gunas in her unmanifest form in like a perfect proportion, right? And then in her manifest form, well, we know, for those of you that like Ayurveda, Ayurveda is based on the gunas going out of proportion. I wouldn't have a job, you know, if the Devi didn't manifest. So that's another way to understand to her, right? In her tamasic, her rajasic, her sattvic forms. And then on one of my earliest slides, we had the para, and the apara forms of the goddess as well. We could spend the rest of our time together just thinking of ways that we could, why 3, right? 3 is such a wonderful number. But just, you know, I like that when I'm chanting it to think that I'm just soaking in these like slightly different vibrations, which with each of the namas, okay? So Anna, we can go to the next one. So here you'll feel, oh, and here's the translation. Okay, so just as we just went over, right? Namas means salutations. Tasya is the feminine form of tad, right? It can also have a neuter or a masculine form. It's in the 4th, also called the dative case singular. So we're going to translate it as to her. And so here's where I wanted us to have a little fun with the Panini and find out why we use the 4th vibhakti. And I know some of my friends that I spent many years studying Panini with are on the live stream. So namas to them for helping me on this journey and doing this good work with me. So here we go. Let's get on the same page. So this is chapter 2, section 3, verse 16 in the Ashtadhyayi, right? I don't know, grammar Bible, I don't know how else to call it, of Sanskrit, that it might take me many lifetimes to get through. But my friends and I have been studying the karakas and the vibhaktis for a while. And so here is the sutra that tells us to use the dative case, the 4th vibhakti, with namas, along with other words of reverence. So this one, I'll just make up a tune for it, and I'll just chant it 3 times. Namasvasti svaha svadhalam vashad yogachcha. Namasvasti svaha svadhalam vashad yogachcha. Namasvasti svaha svadhalam vashad yogachcha. So I'm sure many of us were saying swaha this morning at the fire ceremony, right? Many of these terms of reverence are very, very familiar to us at the ashram. And so the way the sutras work in the Ashtadhyayi is that certain words from previous sutras carry down, and you need to be careful to know what's carrying down when you go to translate the sutra. So that's why I have these 2 terms in parentheses. They're ones that are being pulled from previous sutras. So we have this one, anabhihite, 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 and then also chaturthi, chaturthi, chaturthi. So when we translate this, we have to take into account the anabhite as well as the chaturthi. Chaturthi, people probably recognize, is 4. So here's where we're getting fourth case, dative case. This anabhite is a mouthful. I'm not going to pull up that whole sutra, but on here, what does that anabhite? It means a lot. We're not going into all of it, but it means one unexpressed otherwise by ting krit tadita samasa, then this. Okay, so there's all other rules embedded in there. All right, so when not those things, the fourth case is also used after a nominal stem co-occurring with namas. Our nominal stem in the stuti is tad, right? That turned into tasyai because tad was paired with namas, okay? So basically, in plain English, when you have a term of reverence, then you can use the dative case. You can use the fourth case. And that's why so often, right? You'll see it all the time now, right? If you want to make up your own mantra, you just need to know the dative case properly of whomever you're paying reverence to, right? And just pay attention to those case endings, okay? But we can also use it with swasti, with swaha, with svada, alam, and vashat. So all these other terms of reverence. And actually, you know, when I was making this collection of all the names of the Devi, Svaha and Svada were even the names of the Devi, I think, that I encountered in there, okay? So that would be interesting to do reverence to reverence, all right? Everybody good with this? So now you can feel good, right? You did all the hard work. You sweated a little. You studied Panini. Now you can just drink chai for the rest of the day. Okay? All right. So then let's go ahead to the next slide. All right. So we're going back to the beginning, right? We chanted so many times, so let's do this 3 times together. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu. So this also we chanted in all 21, right? Along with the Namastasyai. All right? So here, what are we chanting? Certainly we see Devi, right? Devi Mahatmyam. And that's there's so many words in here. I don't know if you all feel the same, but a lot of times now I don't actually translate certain words. You know, we could say goddess for Devi, but why? When we can just say Devi, and then it gives us that sense of the root, right? The shining nature that we lose with goddess. And then, I don't know, personally, when I hear goddess, I start thinking of like Mount Olympus or something like that. So, right? But the point is that words have history, right? And when they're in English, then they're like murky, right? They come with all this stuff that maybe we don't want to be on them. So I left it Devi here for that reason. But if you're unfamiliar with the word, the feminine form of goddess, right? And then we have this Ya in the beginning. So this Ya also comes from that same root tad that we got tasyai from, okay? And so we can put a Y in front of all of these terms, and then they become something more like which or who or whom. So we're gonna get the Devi who, okay? That's where the who is coming from. And so which Devi are we talking about? The Devi Sarva Bhuteshu. So we have to break this up into 2 separate words. We have Sarva, which is probably familiar to a lot of you, has different meanings. It's a pronoun, but we'll use all here. That's what makes the most sense. And then we have Bhuteshu. So you might recognize the dhatu, and if you don't, I have it up on the screen, so I can't quiz you. The dhatu bhu, right? To be, one of the most popular dhatus in Sanskrit, right? And then we have it in a special form called the kata. So the base form would then be bhuta, okay? And then the kata is going to decline like an adjective instead of a verb. So you might recognize that eshu ending, right? So that's a seventh case plural, masculine ending, like purushena, for those of you who study Goldman's, right? The first paradigm that you learned, purushena. So we get bhuteshu here. Or I meant to say purusheshu. I'm doing third case and you guys are just smiling at me. Purusheshu, seventh case plural. And here we have the same thing, bhuteshu, seventh case plural, okay? And bhuta is a fun word, right? Because bhu is to be, and then usually with a kata, it's like we take the verb form and we think of it with like an ed ending on it. So like, but to be, we can't do that, right? Because it's an irregular verb. But was, right? We go from to be to was. And so I remember when I was getting deeper into Ganesha, and he was described as his attendants were the Bhuta Gana. And I was like, wait, what? And I was like, oh, this is so interesting, right? The Bhuta can basically then, those who were, right? Could be a spirit, a ghost, right? And also Shiva, who likes to hang out in like the crematoriums, right? Hanging out with the Bhuta Gana, those who were. So it can mean that, but it can also mean those who exist now, right? To be beings. So that's what we have in this instance. We have in beings. And which beings? All beings, right? So like I said before, the pig, the spider, the firefly, us, right? And all beings. And probably we could take it further. The stone, you know, the river, right? The beautiful lake. Outside, okay? So the Devi and all beings who. And then the rest of the hymn is going to give us qualities of this Devi. So we get 21 qualities, right? But this isn't it. These are just 21, like everything, right? That's the main thing we want to remember. Everything is the Devi, right? The fierce and the gentle as well, right? All aspects of existence are the Devi, all right? So this is what we're repeating over and over again, the Devi and all beings who. Everyone good with that? Okay, so then let's go on and let's just chant this together 3 times. Vishnu Mayeti Shabdita, Vishnu Mayeti Shabdita, Vishnu Mayeti Shabdita. So there's some Sandhi in here, right? And so you can see I've undone the Sandhi for you. So we have 3 words, Vishnu Maya, Iti, and Shabdita. So first we can deal with the Shabdita, the same form of the verb that we had in Bhuteshu. So we have this dhatu, shabd, kind of hard to say in English without anything else there, shabd. And so that means to call, all right? So here we're going to put it in the kata form, and we're going to say is called, all right? And then that iti can do various things, but very often quotation marks. So what is the Devi called? The Devi is called the thing on the other side of the iti, to the left of it, okay? So here we get one of the many, 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 many names of the Devi. And I said that so many times because you could get really hung up on this name, and this name could just create a whole plum conundrum, which we're not going to deal with, right? This one's a little hard to translate. So I have here, when we're chanting, I just want us to think the Devi in all beings who is called Vishnu Maya. We could then translate this as a compound, right? But then it gets tricky because it depends on what philosophical school we come from, or we know that Hinduism has all these different branches, and then where are you in that, right? But this is a sacred text to so many people, right? And so they're going to put their philosophical bent on that. And so I don't want to do that for everyone. So I'm just showing you here, you know, like just very different if you do like a tantric translation of Vishnu Maya versus a Vaishnava translation of Vishnu Maya. And this Vishnu Maya is a Vaishnava term, and the first section of the Devi Mahatmyam is a Vaishnava source that's like redone, so that the Devi is not a consort of Vishnu. She is like the head honcho. And so you don't really get that if you translate this term in the most obvious way would be like the Maya of Vishnu. Makes it seem like she's secondary to Vishnu, but within the actual telling of the narrative, that's not the case. So that's also why context matters, of course, when we do translation. And then again, Maya, we can translate this so many different ways. You know, do we follow Sankhya philosophy? Are we a Vedantin? You know, are we following Tantric philosophy? It's going to have a different flavor from something that seems pretty negative, right? Like trickery almost, that kind of illusion. To look at like, yeah, the illusion of Vishnu to like the all-pervading power of differentiation. So different, right? So really, I just want you all to get the sense here that, you know, it's not just like look in a dictionary and see what the dictionary says, but like we have to be steeped in a lot of wisdom traditions, and then like where are we situating ourselves within those? So for today, choose your own adventure, right? That's why we're just saying Vishnu Maya, keeping it in the Sanskrit, and then you can do what you will with that. Good for everyone? Okay, so then let's look at the next one. So for now we have the Devi and all beings who is called Vishnu Maya, right? And now we have the second verse that's a little bit different, and then we just fill in the blanks after this, okay? So let's chant this one again together 3 times. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Chaitanyatya Bhidiyate. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Chaitanyatya Bhidiyate. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Chaitanyatya Bhidiyate. So we already did the Devi and all beings who. So now we have to just do these 3 words. So I've done the Sandhi for you. We have Chaitana iti abhidiyate. You can see it's the same structure as the previous one. We have a word, an iti, and then we have a verb, okay? This verb is a little trickier than the previous one, but we're going to end up with the same thing, who is called blank here. So this abhidiyate is a passive form of the dhatu dha, and it has upasarga that we learned all about with Patty last year, abhi in front of it. And dha is just a little tricky to recognize here because in the passive form, the long a goes to long e, and then we add the ya for the passive, right? So that's how we get abhi, that's the upasarga. Da went to di, we add the ya. The te is the atmanepada ending for the present indicative, vartamane lut, if you care. All right, so we get abhidiyate, just means is called, that's all. All right, and then here we have a less controversial word. What is she called? Chaitana. Chaitana, you might recognize chit in there, right? So a word for consciousness. And so depending on how you translate the Maya in the previous one, you can kind of see when we're chanting, we're going from the Devi in like less, well, let's say unmanifest form, and now like manifesting, and then into something subtle, right? Subtle, manifesting into consciousness, all right? So we have the Devi and all beings who is called consciousness. Good? Okay. So now it gets fun because we've almost done all the work. We just have to do 2 new words, and then we just fill in the blanks on these ones. Okay, so this one has a missing thing in it, so what we'll do is, it's always going to be 2 syllables, so we'll just clap 2 times for the blank here, okay, and then do this one 3 times, okay? Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Rupena Sanstita Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Rupena Sanstita Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Rupena Sanstita. Beautiful. Okay, so we have Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu. We already did that. The Devi who the Devi who blank in all beings. So I put the new things in bold. All right, so who is this Devi? She's the Devi who sanstita. All right, this is another kata. It's the dhatu sta, which means to situate, and there's many different ways to translate that with the upasarga sam. It's matching up with Devi, sanstita. You could I translated this dwells. You could do abides, exists, is situated. You could do many, many things for sanstita. Poetic license here. I just think the word dwells is a beautiful word. So I picked that one. And then how does she dwell or where does she dwell? Rupena. So this comes from the base word rupa. It's a neuter word. It's in the third case singular, that ena ending that I accidentally said earlier with the purushena. Here it is, purushena, rupena. Okay, same form, third case singular. And so this, you could literally say with the form, but rupena at the end of a compound can also just function as like an equal sign. And so we can make it less wordy and it makes more sense with what we're doing because this is what the Devi is this. And then the with the form makes it seem more abstract or something to me. But do as you will. So I'm translating this as. So we'll have the Devi who dwells in all beings as. You could just as easily say the Devi who dwells in all beings with the form. And then there's some rule I don't know. And you can say in the form instead. And tons of the translations do this. So why? I'm not sure. We'll have to find out for another day. Okay? But now we're just going to fill in the blank. All these different ways that the Devi dwells in all beings, in all of us in this room, right, and beyond, in these various forms. And the forms are very interesting, and we could spend a lot of time with all of them, but we have 19 to get through in a short amount of time, so we won't contemplate them too much. I'll leave that for you for the rest of the day. But let's look at the next one, and we'll just do the second pada, so I make sure that I get through all the forms of the Devi before we run out of time. So, and we'll do it twice now. So we'll do Buddhi Rupena Sanstita, Buddhi Rupena Sanstita. So Buddhi, another one that's hard to translate. I personally would just leave it as Buddhi, but those of you who have studied Sankhya, for instance, you'll recognize it as one of the 3 parts of the mind. It's not just in Sankhya philosophy, it's in the tantric cosmology as well. It's in a different place a little bit. But basically it's the part of our physical mind that's the closest to the divine. So in the beginning, there's kind of this progression of Devi, from consciousness and then into, the mind as like a physical thing, okay? And then it's not and so orderly from now on, but in the very beginning, we have a clear order. All right, we can go to the next slide. So I have 3 terms per slide here, and we'll just fill in the blank with the 3 terms and chant them. So, Nidra Rupena Sanstita. One more time. Nidra Rupena Sanstita. Nidra should be a really familiar word to people. And actually one of the names of the Devi in here is Yoga Nidra. And so this is the episode in which she helps Vishnu, actually. She's called Yoga Nidra in that episode. But here we can also think of Nidra just as plain old sleep and another form of consciousness, right? So just giving us the sense, all the forms of consciousness are the Devi. And then we have Kshuddharupena Sanstita, Kshuddharupena Sanstita. So Kshuddha is hunger. And then again, right? This whole book, we can take it literal, we can take it figuratively, right? Maybe you guys are getting hungry for lunch right now, and there's the goddess grumbling and rumbling in your stomach. Isn't that nice? You don't have to be embarrassed during meditation if your stomach makes noises. You're like, that's just the Devi talking. But also figuratively as desire, right? Hunger is a form of desire. And then I personally love this next one. Chaya rupena sanstita, chaya rupena sanstita. So chaya means shadow, and then I think I told you I've been doing a lot of moon work, and so there are myths that go along with the moon, and we don't have time for all that, but you can look them up. But the idea of shadow and light, right? Devi is in everything, right? And then regardless of how you translate Maya with a more positive or negative slant, right? You can still fit it into that framework of like shadow and light then, right? The Devi is everything, right? That's what we're taking away from here. And I love this quote here. She is the shadow, that which casts the shadow, and the light. She's it all, right? She's all of it. Okay. So we'll go to the next term. Shakti rupena sanstita. Shakti rupena sanstita. So Shakti, I know you all know this term. It's another one. It's so hard. I couldn't even pin myself down to one word for this one. I'm like, I'm putting power and energy. I can't choose one. But another one, I like to just leave it as Shakti. And then it's really fun when you read the actual story that there's a place in the story in which, well, for instance, I already gave the example of Kali coming out of the forehead. That's a Shakti of the Devi, right, a tangible one. But then basically this demon is like, you're not playing fair. You're not just fighting me on your own. You sent out all these other warriors. And she's like, what are you talking about? These are just part of me. And they all just like absorb into her. And she's like, here I am, ready to fight you and defeat you. So there's Shakti. And then we have Trishna Rupena Sanstita. Trishna Rupena Sanstita. So this one's similar to Kshuddha, right? This one's thirst. Again, we can actually be thirsty right now, or we can be thirsting for something figuratively. And for those of you that study the Yoga Sutras, Trishna is a very important metaphorical word in the Yoga Sutra. And then we have, this is a beautiful word, I think, Kshanti Rupena Sanstita. Kshanti Rupena Sanstita. This one has various meanings: forgiveness, patience. You can pick what you will, but it's much more beautiful. Kshanti, forgiveness, right? If only we could just speak Sanskrit all day. And the next one we have is Jati Rupena Sanstita. Jati Rupena Sanstita. Jati comes from the Dhatu Jan, right, to be born. And we could translate this just as all living beings, but that's kind of funky because we already have Sarva Bhuteshu, make it really redundant. So Jati can also refer to order because it's all the different forms of living beings. And so that's what I chose here, that she exists in order, not in terms of like, oh, when your desk is neat, that's the Devi, although it is, right? It all is, but more in terms of like, oh, there's a firefly, and there's a pig, and there's a spider, and there's a human. There's all these different forms, right? And she's in all of those. And then we have Lajjarupena Sanstita, Lajjarupena Sanstita. This one you can translate as you like: humility, modesty. I liked in this book the diminution of ego. Where does humility come from? From the diminution of ego. And then here's the one that sums up our whole theme of the conference, right? Shanti Rupena Sanstita, Shanti Rupena Sanstita. So the Devi who dwells in all beings as peace. That's what Shanta told us when he named the conference, right? And the Devi Mahatmyam has his back because she does. I found it here. All right. And then I think we have just 6 left, I hope. Okay. Shraddharupena Sanstita, Shraddharupena Sanstita. Again, we could talk so much about this. There's a whole suktam. All right, but let's just say faith for now, because I have 4 minutes left. And then we have Kanti Rupena Sanstita, Kanti Rupena Sanstita. Anything beautiful, that's the Devi. But anything ugly as well, right? That's just not in here right now. Lakshmi Rupena Sanstita, Lakshmi Rupena Sanstita. So not the goddess Lakshmi with a capital L, but good fortune is a good translation for this one. All right, we've got 2 slides to get through. Here we go. Vritti Rupena Sanstita, Vritti Rupena Sanstita. Again, big Yoga Sutras term, vritti. Let's just leave it at activity. It could be physical, it could be mental, it could be so many things, right? And we have smriti rupena sanstita, smriti rupena sanstita. Another form of consciousness. We had nidra, now we have smriti, memory. And daya rupena sanstita, daya rupena sanstita. Compassion. And last slide. We're doing good. Okay, with my favorites. Tushti rupena sanstita, tushti rupena sanstita. Another big Yoga Sutras term. Tushti, contentment, right? A true spiritual contentment that doesn't come from getting the raise or the car, right? It's irregardless of external conditions. And then matre rupena sanstita, matre rupena sanstita. I think this is so beautiful and important to remember. The Devi who dwells in all beings as mother. All of us, doesn't depend on male, female, or if you don't associate with those terms, right? We all have the Devi as mother in us. I think this is such healing wisdom for those of us who don't have a mother or wish we had a different mother, et cetera, et cetera. Right? It's really healing to think about this, that the Devi is in all of us. We all have the mother inside of us. It's so beautiful. And then this one is such a hoot that this is the last word in this hymn. It's so fun. Pranti rupena sanstita, pranti rupena sanstita. So this term pranti comes from the Dhatu Brahm, which means to roam or wander about. And so you see all these words. You're like, why would the hymn end that she's delusion or perplexity, confusion, error, doubt, uncertainty, moving or wandering about? But I just love it so much because I think about of course, the Devi exists as confusion or wandering, because here we're being told that she exists in all of us, that we're all unified, we're all the same thing. But of course, when we're embodied, it's so hard to know that we're all the same thing, right? And we lose that. And so it's that awakening to our unity. So we wander away from that. Maybe we get really ego-driven, especially in America. We're very individualistic. It's all about me and I. But then maybe after a lot of wandering, we come back and we're like, oh, we have the diminution of ego, right? And we realize, oh, I was asleep, right? Or I was confused, I was perplexed, and now I've wandered back. So I love this like full circle, you know, that, and just so that we can have some compassion for ourselves, right? When we get confused, it's so easy to get confused when we have a body, right? It'd be a lot easier to be like, yes, we're all one, if we didn't have bodies. So I just love this. So take heart if you're confused. It's just the Devi in you. And so here you can just see I've listed all the qualities of the Devi in this particular hymn, but we should have an ellipses really here because it doesn't end here, right? We could just keep going and just list every aspect of the universe, and that would be the Devi. And so I thought we'd just end by chanting this last slide together 3 times. Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. Namastasyai, 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 namo namaha. I'm going to turn this off, I guess.
That was the Devi, it wasn't me. That was amazing. It was like, wow. And one of my favorite verses from Devi Mahatmya is Garja Garja Kshanam Buddha, where the Devis are saying, go ahead, drink your wine, roar, roar, thank you, roar, roar, exhaust yourself. When you fall down, then we'll come in and drink the real wine. Fantastic performance from you, really beautiful. We're going to have an audio, is that so? Yeah? Of Dr. Sharma for a couple minutes. And then what time is lunch? And what time do we come back? Whenever you want to. 2:15 we'll come back. So those people who are not in the room and are remote, go have some lunch, relax, take in the Devi, and we'll be back at 2:15.
Before doing anything, we dedicate ourselves fully to God. Especially before we start taking our lunch or dinner, we chant a mantra from the Upanishad. The mantra that represents prayer to God for all His grace, for all His kind help in protecting us, in sustaining us, in togetherness. May He protect us in togetherness. May He sustain us in togetherness. May we bring about brilliant results of our studies and actions in togetherness. May our spiritual, intellectual pursuits be brilliant. May we never have any ill will against each other. May we have an attitude of universal goodwill and harmony all the time. May we enjoy spiritual, intellectual, material, and all-round peace. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om